For All Mankind. I have not been watching the show, but Dan has been watching it, and he can't say enough great things about it. This is a show about an alternate reality. Could you catch us up really fast?
Yeah, I mean the show is fantastic. I keep saying every week this is literally the best show on television in terms of like if you're a sci-fi fan, this is the best sci-fi show you can watch. Not only that, I think even if you're just not watching a sci-fi show, you just want to watch any TV show ongoing right now. It's 3 seasons in, so you'd have to catch up a little bit, but it is literally one of the best shows on TV. It's executive produced by Ronald D. Moore, who's known for doing the newer iteration of Battlestar Galactica, which I think most sci-fi fans will tell you it's one of, if not the best sci-fi show ever done. So
Right.
for this to be his follow-up, in a manner of speaking, like it's fantastic. So there's a lot of you mentioned something when we were going through a review of the latest episode before we like to prepare for this, that you read the review for the episode 6, which is what we were talking about, and basically you were like, nothing about this review tells me that it's actually a sci-fi show. And I think that speaks to the quality of human drama that the show brings to the table, which is something that a lot of sci-fi shows don't do a very good job of there, because they're really focused on the sci-fi concept and stuff. But this show really puts that like front and center, and it does a good job with it.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation and how sci-fi is really just a backdrop for exploring moral and social issues. And you can put on a good show that's compelling without making everything about multiverses, laser guns, spaceships, and, aliens. But you can have all of those things in it. But they're on Mars now. First of all, what year is it, and how did we get to Mars?
Yeah, so the year is 1996, but some of the technology that they show you is like more like what we have today in the modern day world, because the show, the whole premise of the show is this: you have a situation where NASA lost the race to the moon, so the Soviets won, and therefore NASA continued to get funding and never shut or died down the way it did in real life, and because of that, they've continued to make tons of money. Now they're actually making money for the United States, rather than just being a black hole for money going into all these projects. So beyond the moon, they actually in season 2 they set up the whole base in the moon, and that was in the 80s, and they skip a decade to get to season 3, and now they're all going to Mars. You have the Americans, the Soviets, and then a private space agency called Helios going there as well. And now in this episode 6, they're there, and the NASA guys apparently, so the NASA and the Soviets landed together because the Soviet spacecraft got damaged, so the NASA guys picked them up, got some extra fuel, and so the NASA and the Soviet people are like on one side in their habitation module, I think they call it, and then you have the private team doing their own thing separately, but obviously they're not that far away from each other, so they can kind of go back and forth. And the key in this episode is that the NASA hab modules, their carbon scrubbers are not working. So, and their cooling systems are not working. So on Mars it can get really hot during the day. So if you don't have active cooling systems, it can get really hot inside these modules that you're living in. And without the carbon scrubbers, your oxygen content gets low, and that could cause hypoxia. So they're really struggling with those systems.
So there is a bit of science in it, which is
good,
at least. The
it
science
does a
writing
good job
sounds
with
good.
that. Absolutely.
But now, in this episode, in this alternate universe, Will Tyler comes out while documenting his time on Mars. That causes a little bit of upheaval on Earth and Mars. How did the show handle it? Was it, it's an alternate universe, so it's not necessarily going to reflect this world.
Yeah, well, I mean, then you got to take into account it's still 1996. They may have flat screen TVs and an iPod and stuff, and they're all doing video calls with each other. It's not like they have iPhones, but they're, the technology is probably 10 years ahead of where it was in real life. But that doesn't mean the social sensibilities are where we are today in 2022. So you have this like huge reaction to him coming out on national TV when he's talking to a news reporter, and like apparently they throw out a number like 73% of Americans polled are still very much against the idea of their their astronauts or I don't know exactly what they say, but like people basically somebody in the public eye being gay. So it's very much frowned upon by the majority of Americans at this time. Ironically, President Ellen Wilson and her husband, like they're both actually gay, and this is like a whole story. You have to watch back the previous 2 seasons of the show. And so the sitting president, who is a Republican, whose party is majority against this, against gay rights and stuff, she like secretly is also gay, so like she's put into this big conundrum. How does she deal with it? Because there's the whole what she feels about it personally, how she has to publicly portray an image, and then how to balance out Democrats calling for this to be like, now okay, this is the landmark moment for us to go in favor of gay rights, and then she's from the Republican side, so she's like, I can't just like all of a sudden let piss off everybody in my own party. So ultimately how to deal with that is her husband comes up with this idea of basically introducing what was in, I think based on real life stuff, I think there was this law that officially wasn't called this, but it was basically don't ask, don't tell in the military. And that's by the end of the episode, she's making this press conference announcing this, that in the military, nobody can ever ask you if you're gay or not, and you're not supposed to disclose that. And that's where we leave it. And I was just like, the tie into the real life. It's
interesting where they blur the lines between reality and alternate reality.
The show does a fantastic job of that. And I love how, I mean, even for something like this, which is as controversial a topic as it is, I mean, they'd even deal with the fact that he did something like this, which, I mean, well, he came out on national TV, which, think about it what you will morally, but it totally like overshadows the rest of the mission, where they're barely keeping themselves alive while their carbon scrubbers are not working and their heating systems are failing, and they have Soviets on the team as well as NASA astronauts living together. And like, so now you have to account for like what the Soviets are thinking about this. Like there's all kinds of political, so there's many layers and nuances to this, and even regardless of whether you agree with what Will did or not and where you are on the moral side of the argument, there's all these other like elements that they bring into play, which is, again, like I say, from a science fiction standpoint and allegory, and as well as just a human drama of it, this episode is one of the best things that the show has done to date.
Yeah, and just to touch on a couple of the other things, we have Danny Stevens' character kind of spiraling. We know that other people are catching on to his issues. Kelly and Politov, they have this love affair, and now her dad's entering the picture. What are the juicier things of this episode that make it stand out?
So Pelotov is one of the Soviet guys who came on board when they took the Soviet astronauts on board, and he's like he was one of the younger guys, and Kelly is Ed Baldwin's daughter, and Ed Baldwin is the one leading. He's a former NASA astronaut he's leading the mission for Helios, so he's their mission commander, and he comes over with because their mission is much bigger. They have more astronauts, a much bigger ship, so they have much more food and drinks and everything, so they're like living the comfortable life, whereas these NASA and Soviet guys are scrounging to like make everything work, and they have dry food, and they have to hydrate their food and stuff like what you hear NASA astronauts do in the space station. So he comes over, he brings over like Pepsi and nice meals and everything, so they're having a party. But then Kelly's told Pelotov, we can't let my dad know that this is the thing, we are a thing. So he acts like he doesn't know her at all, and the two of them are actually working on the same systems together, so they would be on a day-to-day basis working with each other all the time. So then Ed is also a staunch American, so he reacts you stupid Soviets, you work with my daughter all day long and you have no idea what her name is, and it's just hilarious because Joel Kinnaman is a great actor, and then just the whole it's sort of when it comes across as a situation where you're screwed if you do and you're screwed if you don't, and he pretends not to know her, but it somehow leads to even worse reaction than maybe if he had just told her that the two of them are having I don't know if you want to call it affair, neither of them are married, but they're having a fling, I guess, if
a fling
you want to call it that.
It's
funny.
So
I love the again, just the it's not discovering life on Mars, but this is the part of the show that keeps you entertained. So
there's kind of that theme of life going on as we go deeper into the universe and into space. That's good social programming, maybe. Life is going to continue. There's always going to be issues, and no matter where we go, we're still going to be human. nice little segue there to, in terms of where we're going, where do you see this? Where do you see this going?
So by the end of this episode, which by the way, the human drama of this is, I think, what will draw. Like, this show is not just meant for hardcore sci-fi fans, and I think
Sure.
this continues
Doesn't
in this
sound like it.
episode. Moving forward, what happens by the end of the episode? So okay, so the during the course of the episode, the Soviets approach Helios on Earth, because they're working in the Johnson Space Center anyway, because now it's a joint mission for the NASA and Soviets. So those Soviet people who are already in the U.S., they go over to the Helios HQ and they say, hey, look, our satellite imagery found like this huge Lake Tahoe size underground water deposit, which, by the way, their big goal is to find water so they can generate fuel for the journey back home, which would be part of their mixture that they would need for their rocket. So it's a big resource, and then just to live on Mars, you need water, obviously. So, but they're not sharing this information with NASA. They're like, we'll pay you Helios to go dig this up for us, but then, we get to keep it. We don't share it. But then NASA finds out. I won't go into the details of how they find out. NASA finds out, and then the people at Johnson Space Center let the people on like the captain of the NASA expedition on Mars know, and she hears this video message and then goes and confronts him, like, and Danny, who's the commander of the NASA mission, has worked with Ed for like 20 years when he was at NASA, so they're like great friends. And all of a sudden she's like, how dare you not tell me this? I know this is like, your Helios boss has told you you can't say NDAs and whatever, but so now you have this pressure cooker that is about to explode, because NASA's like, you Soviets are living under our roof, but you wouldn't tell us that you found water, and you went to Helios to go dig it out for you, and your plan was to just leave us to die without the water that we would need too. And it's like this tribalism, like the whole thing is, this episode is called New Eden, like a fresh start for humans, but somehow the same old problems keep cropping up of this tribalism and everything.
Eden wasn't devoid of problems either.
Exactly, and then on
and it
Earth,
also led to all kinds of new things when you think about it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and then the other part of this is on Earth, like apparently Ellen, the President Wilson's husband, is having a fling with another guy, and that's, I guess, fine, because they both know to each other they're gay, to the world they're not, and they're married and whatnot. But that guy meets some other Washington insider who happens to, I think he's just his friend, and they're talking at a bar over drinks. But then he gets into a car and says, hey man, I gotta tell you this story about, like, President Wilson and the first man or whatever. So now this guy might be going to like a Bernstein or Woodward and Bernstein, like somebody at the Washington Journal, and that might explode, like, that we might finally hear publicly that President Wilson is gay, like this character who's hidden it all her life. She used to be an astronaut, now is a president. And so you have that side of it ready to explode, and then you have what's going on Mars, like about to completely, like, either fall apart or blow. So this episode leaves you with like this boiling pot that is like about to absolutely blow up, and you don't know where things are going to go and how the pieces are going to fall. But I am just super excited for what happens next, because now it's a little over halfway through the season.
It sounds like a compelling show with aspects that you really wouldn't expect. It touches on a little bit of everything. I know. How many episodes are left in the season?
There's 10 episodes. We're 6 episodes in, so 4 more to go, so we're a little more than halfway through.
I mean, just talking about this now, I'm excited for the next time jump to hear, like, what this decade looks like.
Yeah, they skip 10 years. They skip a decade every season. So like I think they have like 8 seasons of this plan, so they may end up all the way to like the 2050s by the time we finish up.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about how this goes, and maybe I'll end up watching it, because it sounds like there's a lot going on.
It's a great show.
And you watching this, you should watch it. And if you are watching it, tell us what you think about it, because this is how we make shows. We interact with you, you tell us what you think, you become comment of the week, or maybe you're watching now and you think, I'd like to say something to that person, and you can, and we'll look at it. But in between those times, like us, subscribe to us, let us know what you think. We're all over the internet. You can find us pretty much anywhere on social media. Look for Oh So Curious. This is a way for you to be part of our movie fan community. I'm going to get used to saying that at some point. Anyway,
NFC.
Our NFC.
MFC. Movie fan.
We should make an NFT of our MFC. Anyway,